Picture this, being tossed aside by the very person you trusted most, left with nothing but two hungry mouths to feed and a heart shattered beyond repair. You wander the streets, invisible to the world, convinced no one will ever care again, until a familiar face from your past suddenly reappears. But what does it mean? A twist of fate? A second shot at love? Or just another painful lesson waiting to unfold? Stay with us as we unravel this emotional tale of shattered promises, unexpected reunions, and the fight for healing. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe so you don't miss any of our heart-touching stories. The streets of Lagos buzzed with their usual chaos, honking horns, impatient drivers, and the rush of morning life spilling onto every corner. Inside a sleek black SUV, Maxwell's voice was calm yet authoritative as he spoke into his earpiece, finalizing details for a high-stake real estate merger. "Close the deal before noon," he said sharply, eyes still fixed on his tablet. "No delays." His driver, well used to the pattern, maneuvered carefully through traffic, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror for confirmation. Just as they approached a familiar junction riddled with potholes, the car jolted slightly. Maxwell barely noticed, until something outside the window pulled his attention like a magnet. He looked up absently, ready to frown at the state of the road, but what he saw next made his breath hitch. There, by the roadside, slumped under the shade of a struggling tree, was a woman. Her clothes were faded, her hair messy, her arms cradling two little boys who looked too weak to cry. One was dozing off on her shoulder, the other stared blankly at the cars rushing past, his tiny lips dry and cracked. Maxwell felt something stir, something he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. No, it couldn't be. He blinked, leaned forward, squinting past the morning glare. But the more he looked, the harder it became to deny. That face, thinner now, worn by hardship, hollow in the cheeks, but still hauntingly familiar. "Vivian?" His voice cracked, almost to himself. "Pull over," he said suddenly, startling his driver. The SUV eased to a halt a few meters ahead, and Maxwell didn't wait. He stepped out, ignoring the curious looks from passers-by as his expensive shoes crunched against the gravel. With every step toward her, memories came flooding back. Vivian, once the brightest light in their school. The girl who won every debate, led every campaign, and walked the halls with unmatched grace. People used to call her the future governor. Teachers adored her, boys worshipped her, girls envied her. And he had admired her from a quiet distance. Just an ordinary boy with no titles, no flair, no courage to speak up. She had barely known he existed, except for the polite nods in passing. But to him, she had been everything. And now, she was here, on the pavement, holding two boys who looked as though they hadn't eaten in days. He stepped closer, hesitant. "Vivian?" At the sound of his voice, her body stiffened. She didn't lift her head. Instead, she turned away slightly, her back to him, shielding her children as though she could hide the truth of her condition by refusing to meet his gaze. "Vivian, it's me. Maxwell," he said again, softer this time. Still no response. His heart pounded in his chest, unsure of whether it was shame for her or guilt for his own comfort. The silence stretched painfully between them, thick with tension and unspoken memories. Eventually, she muttered without turning, "Please, walk away." But he didn't. He couldn't. "Vivian, look at me." She shook her head, her fingers tightening protectively around her son's. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't. Not like this, not you." Maxwell stepped closer, lowering himself slightly, desperate to see her eyes. "I just want to know what happened. You were everything." That made her flinch. Maybe it was the word. Everything. Once, that had been her truth. Now it felt like mockery. And yet, beneath the dirt and exhaustion, he still saw her. That fire, though dimmed, was not extinguished. Back then, all it took was a single moment of courage. Maxwell had worked up the nerve to speak to her. Vivian, the girl who practically ruled their school corridors. But her response hadn't been cruel, just effortless. She laughed, not mockingly, but in a way that clearly drew a line between them. She lived in a world of confidence and charm, and he was nothing more than a fleeting shadow in the background. And now, as he stood watching her on the dusty sidewalk, that shining girl he once admired was nowhere to be seen. In her place was a woman hardened by reality, holding her boys like they were the last thread anchoring her to this life. Maxwell felt a knot tighten in his chest. He hadn't seen her in years, but her presence still stirred something powerful. Her breathing was shaky, hands clenching the fabric of her children's tattered shirts. The boys looked up with wide, wary eyes, glancing between their mother and the man who now hovered near. He inched closer, careful not to alarm her, his voice measured but tinged with disbelief. "Vivian, what happened? How did you end up here?" She didn't look at him. Her head dipped, her gaze fixed on the ground. "It doesn't matter. Just leave." The pain in her words struck deeper than he expected. "Vivian, this isn't where you're meant to be. You were destined for something greater." A dry chuckle slipped from her lips. It wasn't warm or humorous. It was tired. Life happened, Maxwell, and not everyone gets a second chance. He looked at her sons, pale and restless, then back to her. There was no pride left in her posture, only survival. And suddenly, the need to step in overpowered his hesitation. "Let me help you." That did it. Her head jerked up, eyes blazing with a storm of emotions. "Help? You don't understand," she snapped, voice tight. "You can't just fix everything. Some things are too broken to be fixed." Maxwell froze, caught off guard by the fire in her tone. This wasn't the same girl he used to daydream about. This woman had bled, starved, cried, and come out the other side not softer, but sharper. "I'm not saying I have all the answers," he said carefully, "but you don't have to go through this alone." She turned her back to him completely now, curling around her boys like a wall had just gone up. "Just go, Maxwell. This isn't your problem." But he couldn't look away. Beneath the weariness and grime, he still saw her, the brilliant girl who once captivated a whole school. That light was dimmed, but not extinguished. "Come with me, Vivian. I can help you." She shook her head, fast and final. "Number we will manage. I don't need your pity." He inhaled sharply. "This is not pity. It's me trying to help someone I know, someone I care about." She clenched her jaw. There was steel in her posture now, the kind that only comes from years of carrying burdens alone. "You don't understand. If I go with you, what happens next? I can't rely on anyone. Life has taught me that lesson well." Her voice was steady now, not a whisper of weakness in it. Maxwell's throat tightened. He understood more than she realized. "Life has been unkind to you, Vivian. But you don't have to carry it all by yourself." She didn't answer, just held her sons closer and murmured, "We are fine. Just leave." He had barely finished offering to help when she pulled back like he'd lit a match too close to her wounds. Vivian's eyes flared with resistance, her spine straightened, and her chin lifted. She was ready to bite back. "I said we'll manage," she muttered, brushing invisible dust off her skirt. "We don't need help." Maxwell didn't move. He just stood there, watching her. He could hear the pain in her voice. It wasn't pride speaking. It was survival. But before he could say another word, a movement beside her caught his attention. Her younger son, the smaller of the two, had stretched out his tiny hand toward a group of kids nearby. They were gathered around a street vendor, eagerly chewing on warm buns and meat pies. The boy's eyes locked on one child devouring a piece of meat like it was gold. Hunger etched every inch of his face. Vivian turned and followed his gaze. Her heart stopped. She saw it too, the longing, the desperation in her son's face, and without thinking, she slapped his little hand down. "Stop that!" she whispered harshly, pulling him close. The boy blinked back tears, startled. "You don't beg," she said, not to him but to herself. Maybe out of guilt, maybe out of habit. She had worked too hard to protect them from shame. Maxwell stepped in, his voice softer now, but urgent. "Vivian, please, let me help. Even if it's just for one day. I know you're strong. I know you've carried more than anyone ever should. But your boys, they're starving. And you—" He paused, looking her straight in the eye. "You're fighting the urge to say yes. I see it." Vivian clenched her jaw, eyes darting from Maxwell to her children. They looked so thin, so small. Her older son leaned into her side, his lips dry, his breath shallow. She didn't want to give in, but her body was already trembling with the weight of her choice. Maxwell lowered his tone further, stepping closer. "Please, if not for you, then for them. Just for tonight." Silence. And then, barely audible, she whispered, "All right, but just for tonight." The words had hardly left her lips before he gently guided her up. She rose slowly, as though her body feared what her heart had just agreed to. Her children clung to her, too tired to ask questions. Maxwell led them to the SUV, holding the door open. She hesitated, her eyes scanning the polished black frame, the leather seats inside. It all looked too clean, too foreign, but she stepped in. The drive was heavy with silence. Vivian didn't say a word. She simply curled up in the corner of the car, holding her sons tightly, like someone might take them away. Her eyes stared blankly ahead, but her cheeks glistened. The tears came without sound, each one sliding down the path carved by 100 before it. Her boys lay across her lap, resting their heads, their eyes fluttering closed. Maxwell didn't interrupt. He just sat back, letting the silence hold its weight. By the time they pulled into his driveway, the sun had dipped behind the clouds, and the golden lights of the house cast long shadows across the lawn. It was big, modern, beautiful. Vivian remained in the car, refusing to move. "I can wait out here," she said quietly. "We'll just sleep here. I'm dirty. I'm not meant for a place like that." Maxwell turned toward her, his tone steady but kind. "Vivian, this house isn't about worth. It's a roof. It's warmth. And tonight, it's yours." She swallowed hard but said nothing. Her grip on her sons tightened. Slowly, he extended his hand. She hesitated, then placed hers in his. The door opened, and warm air wrapped around them like a blanket. A faint aroma filled the air, something rich, familiar. In the dining area, plates had already been set, steaming bowls of jollof rice, fried plantains, turkey legs that looked like they came straight from a feast. Her children's eyes widened at the sight. Vivian stood frozen at the entrance, her body tense. Her boys, sensing the invitation, rushed to the table without waiting. They didn't need permission. The older one grabbed a fork. The younger used his fingers. They ate like the world had stopped spinning. Vivian remained by the door, one hand gripping the edge of the wall. She watched as her sons devoured each bite, their little faces lighting up for the first time in weeks. She didn't smile. Instead, her eyes welled up. She knelt on the tiled floor, arms around herself, whispering under her breath, "Thank you." Maxwell, sitting quietly at the far end of the table, slid a plate toward her. "Eat, Vivian. You don't have to be afraid." She reached for the spoon with trembling fingers, her eyes never leaving her son's. She took one bite. The taste hit her like a memory. Rich, flavorful, so painfully comforting. Her lips quivered. A tear slipped down, then another. She covered her mouth with one hand, the other still holding the spoon. Her shoulders shook silently. Maxwell didn't stare. He simply poured her a glass of water and slid it across the table. Vivian nodded slowly, tears falling freely now. She looked at him, really looked at him, and whispered, "Thank you." The boys had been taken gently upstairs by the housemaid, each clutching a warm towel and new clothes in their tiny arms. Their laughter echoed faintly down the hallway, a sound that hadn't existed in Vivian's world for a long time. Now, in the quiet of the living room, she sat alone on the edge of an armchair. Her body remained still, tense, as if relaxing even slightly might cause everything to disappear. Her gaze was locked on a fixed spot on the floor, far away, but not really seeing it. Maxwell remained nearby, seated just across from her, giving her space, careful not to invade the fragile bubble around her. The house was warm, the lights soft, yet Vivian looked like someone trying to find her balance on shaking ground. "Vivian," he said gently, breaking the silence. "What happened?" Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak right away. She pressed her palms together, fingers interlocking as if bracing herself. Then she inhaled deeply, her shoulders lifting and falling. "I met him not long after school ended," she began quietly. "Kelvin." The name alone tasted like regret. "He was everything. You know those boys that used to make your heart skip in class? But this one, he didn't just make mine skip, he owned it. He made me feel like I was the only woman on the planet. Every word, every gesture, it felt real." Maxwell listened, not interrupting, just watching her with steady eyes. "I had dreams," she continued, voice soft but breaking in places. "But there were no jobs after I graduated. Nothing. People would smile and say things like, 'You're a woman, your place is in a man's kitchen.' I hated it. But I started to believe it. I told myself maybe this life with him, was my purpose." She paused, wiping her palms slowly over her cheek. "Kelvin talked about us having a big family. Kids running around, a house filled with laughter, and I bought into it. Hook, line, everything. I was foolish, naive. I thought love would be enough." Maxwell leaned forward slightly, eyes never leaving her face. Still, he said nothing. The pain in her voice told more than words could. "I gave him everything," she said, her voice trembling now, eyes wet. "Every piece of me. But the moment I told him I was carrying his child, his eyes, they changed. At first, he pretended. He smiled, said the right things, but I could feel it. He was afraid. Or maybe he just never meant any of it." She gave a weak chuckle, but it carried no joy. Her eyes, glassy with tears, found Maxwell's briefly before looking away again. Maxwell didn't speak. He didn't try to console her with empty phrases. He just remained present, quiet, letting her speak at her own pace. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't invisible, and that alone was everything. She leaned back, her shoulders sagging under the weight of everything she had carried for years. Her fingers trembled slightly as she rubbed her palms together, eyes still locked on a memory that refused to fade. "I moved in with him," she said finally, her voice distant. "Kelvin. Against everything my parents warned me about. My father said I was being reckless, that no man who hadn't paid my bride price should ever have that kind of access to me. But I didn't listen. I thought love was enough." She gave a small, dry laugh, more bitter than amused. "He spoke so beautifully, made it sound like we were building a life. Every night he whispered things about our future, a big home, children, vacations. I was swept up in it. His promises felt real, and I was desperate to belong somewhere, to someone." Her eyes grew glassy as the words spilled from her. "Then I got pregnant. Everything shifted. He changed. Calls became shorter. Some days he wouldn't come home, and then, one morning, he was gone, just like that." She turned to face Maxwell now, pain flashing across her face. "I didn't know he had stayed as long as he did only because rent was already paid up. The moment it expired, the landlord came knocking. I had no money, no job, no support. I was heavy with twins, and I was thrown out like I meant nothing. Maxwell's fists tensed, but he said nothing, just listened. "My parents?" she whispered. "They slammed the door in my face, told me I had embarrassed them, that the church would mock them. My mother cried, but she didn't stop my father from calling me a disgrace." A long silence stretched between them. "I gave birth alone," she said softly, the words cracking. "In the dead of night, cold, shivering, with nothing but a torn wrapper and the stars above me, my twin boys." I looked into their eyes and made a vow that no matter what, I would find a way. I would make it right. For them. Her voice broke fully now, and tears streamed down her cheeks. I couldn't ask for help. I didn't know how. Back in school, I was everything. Vivacious, confident. People looked up to me. How could I let them see me like this? Struggling, starving. She shook her head slowly. I thought I could fix it. Just hold on a little longer. Push through. But I wasn't pushing anymore. I was drowning. Everything just collapsed. She looked at Maxwell then, really looked at him, with swollen eyes and a trembling mouth. "I never thought it would be you," she whispered. "Of all people, you. After how I looked down on you back then, after I laughed when you tried to speak to me, I thought you weren't good enough." Maxwell didn't move. He didn't speak. But something in the way he watched her, still, present, and full of quiet grace, spoke louder than anything words could offer. Vivian broke, her head lowered, shoulders shaking as she cried into her hands, not just from pain, but from the ache of humility, the strange comfort of being seen, and the unexpected mercy of being helped by the very person she once overlooked. Maxwell shifted slightly in his seat, his eyes steady as he looked at her. "Vivian," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I want you to understand something. This, what I'm doing, it's not about the past. It's not because of some old feelings or high school memories. I'm helping you because I saw a woman who desperately needed support, a woman fighting alone with 2 children and no lifeline. That's it. Nothing more." Vivian lowered her head, her fingers gripping the fabric of her skirt. "But I don't deserve this," she said softly, her voice cracked. "I'm not looking for pity, Maxwell. I don't want to feel like I owe you anything. I don't want to live in a house where I feel like a guest, or worse, a burden." He leaned forward slightly, his expression soft but unwavering. "You're not a burden, Vivian, and you don't owe me anything. I help people I don't even know every single day. People I have no history with, no connection to, and they never pay me back. So why wouldn't I do the same for you? Someone I grew up with, someone I once admired, yes, but more importantly, someone who deserves a break after everything life has thrown at her." She looked up at him, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. "I can work. I can find something to do. I don't want to feel like I'm freeloading. I've had to depend on no one but myself for so long. I don't even know how to accept help anymore." Maxwell nodded slowly, taking in every word. "That's fair. And I know it's not easy to receive without guilt when you've been surviving on your own for so long. But this isn't about rent or chores or proving anything. You need stability. Your boys need to sleep without worrying where their next meal will come from. Let that be enough for now." He paused, letting his words settle in. "I'm not asking you to forget what you've been through. I'm asking you to allow yourself some peace. Just breathe, heal. Trust me. I mean it when I say I'm here until you find your feet. No expectations, no debt, just a hand reaching out, because sometimes that's all we need." Vivian sat in silence for a moment, her chest rising and falling with a mixture of fear, relief, and disbelief. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to exhale, not just out of exhaustion, but because something in his words cracked through the wall she'd built for years. And in that quiet, her eyes met his, not with shame this time, but with something closer to understanding. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the curtains as Vivian stepped into the living room, her eyes still puffy from a restless night. Maxwell had already left early for a meeting, but he had made arrangements. He assigned his personal assistant, Sandra, to take her and the boys shopping. Vivian hesitated when Sandra arrived, dressed smartly and smiling warmly. "He said you should get everything you and the boys need," Sandra explained, holding out a sleek card. Vivian immediately shook her head. "No, this is too much. I can't take all of this." But Sandra placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled kindly. "He already paid, in full. This isn't charity. It's care." At the boutique, Vivian had trouble walking past the first aisle. The price tags made her chest tighten. Everything looked far too expensive. Soft cotton dresses, clean little sneakers, elegant fabrics she hadn't touched in years. Her instinct was to retreat, to say no. But then she remembered how her boys had stared longingly at food stalls and other children's clothes. And so, slowly, she let herself pick. For them. And maybe, just a little, for herself. A modest yellow outfit caught her eye, simple yet bright, with a fit that reminded her she was still a woman, not just a worn-out mother. By the time she returned to the house, something had shifted. Sandra had helped her braid her hair neatly. She stepped into the living room feeling like someone she had forgotten, someone whole. Then she saw them, her boys, standing by the hallway, faces freshly washed, grinning from ear to ear. Both had clean haircuts, neat clothes, and shoes that actually fit. For a second, she didn't recognize them. They looked so alive. Vivian's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. She rushed over, dropped to her knees, and wrapped them both in a tight hug. They giggled in surprise, calling out, "Mummy! Mummy!" She laughed too, real laughter. And when she looked up, Maxwell had just walked in. She met his eyes. Her lips trembled, but this time from gratitude, not fear. And though no words were spoken, he saw it clearly. She was starting to feel human again. Months had quietly slipped by in the warmth of Maxwell's home, and with each passing day, Vivian began to breathe again. Her sons were thriving, healthy, full of laughter, and secure. Maxwell had been nothing short of a rock, providing not just shelter, but dignity, restoring what life had stolen piece by piece. Yet as the house grew more familiar, a quiet restlessness began to stir in her chest. She had been cared for, loved even in silence, but she couldn't keep depending on him, not forever. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows danced along the quiet corridor, Vivian walked slowly toward Maxwell's study. The light under the door was still on. She hesitated briefly before knocking softly. "Come in," his voice called out. She stepped in, folding her arms slightly, nerves hidden behind a thin smile. Maxwell looked up from his desk, surprised but welcoming. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. She sat, fidgeting with her fingers. "Maxwell, I've been thinking. I want to step out. Get a job." He didn't say anything at first, simply leaned back in his chair, eyes studying her face. "I'm grateful for everything you've done," she continued, voice steady but laced with emotion. "For me, for the boys. But I can't keep living like this. I need to work. I need to feel like I'm contributing. I can't be a burden. You've done enough." Maxwell sighed. "Vivian, I never saw you as a burden. You needed time, to heal, to breathe again. I wanted you to be fully ready." She nodded. "And I am. I feel strong enough now, truly. My mind is clear. I'm not broken anymore. I just want to earn something, anything. I'm not aiming high. I can clean, be a janitor, anything, as long as it's honest." He raised a brow at that. "A janitor?" he repeated. She shrugged. "I'm not looking for titles, Maxwell. Just a chance to stand again." He paused, then leaned forward, voice softer now. What if I gave you a job in my company? Her eyes widened, unsure if she heard him right. You'd really do that? Why not? He said simply. You're smart, determined. You've survived more than most. That counts for something. But I don't know anything about finance, she said quickly. I was a science student, and even that feels like a past life. We'll put you through, he said with a smile. People learn every day. People make mistakes, every single one of us. What matters is that you try. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. Thank you, she whispered. When her first day came, she walked into the office wearing a modest blouse and skirt, holding her breath. The building felt too polished, too grand. Everyone seemed to move with confidence, efficient, dressed sharp, typing fast, speaking fluently. She felt small again, unsure of where to begin. She caught the subtle glances, the quiet whispers. Who is she? What's her story? But in her tiny office, she had placed a single frame on her desk. A recent photo. Her two sons beaming, arms around each other, their happiness undeniable. Every time the tension crept into her chest or the stares made her doubt her place, she would glance at that picture. And it reminded her why she was here. They were her strength. And no matter how loud the doubts became, she refused to let her past or their opinions decide her worth. She was building something now, and this time she wasn't going to quit. Vivian's sons splashed joyfully in the pool, their laughter echoing through the compound like music. Their faces, once shadowed by hunger and worry, now glowed with carefree energy. Maxwell sat at the edge, sleeves rolled up, watching them with a fond smile. One of the boys, giggling, called out, "Uncle Max, can you swim?" Maxwell let out a small laugh, shaking his head. Not really. Both boys burst into even louder laughter, pointing at him as if they'd just uncovered the funniest secret in the world. They splashed harder, teasing him with playful chants, daring him to join. Maxwell only chuckled, wiping a droplet of water that landed on his shirt, his heart full at the sight of their joy. A few steps away, Vivian leaned quietly against a pillar, watching the moment unfold. Her arms were crossed, but her face was soft, her eyes calm. There was something unfamiliar but welcome settling inside her. Peace. It wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with fanfare. But it was there, in the laughter of her children, in the way Maxwell looked at them, in the absence of fear. Far across town, in the greasy, open yard of a local mechanic shop, Kelvin wiped his oily hands as he paced impatiently beside his car. The engine had been stalling for days, and now he was stuck waiting while the mechanic fiddled under the hood. Nearby, two men leaned against a wall, chatting idly as they scrolled through their phones. "Have you seen that girl, Vivian?" one of them asked. "She's living large now. Some big man took her in. Her kids look like royalty." Kelvin's head snapped up. "Big man?" he asked, approaching the men. "What are you talking about?" The man looked up, eyes wide. "You know her?" Kelvin nodded slowly, tension creeping into his shoulders. "What do you mean someone took her in?" "She and her boys live with one wealthy guy," the man replied. "He takes care of them. Full package, school, clothes, food. The guy's practically their dad now." Kelvin's chest tightened. His mind began to race, images swirling, Vivian, the boys, another man stepping into his place. That couldn't happen. He had been absent, yes, but forgotten? Replaced? Determined, he asked around until he got the address. The next day, he marched into Maxwell's office without an appointment, pushing past the front desk with forced confidence. "Sir, you can't go in," the receptionist protested, but he ignored her and pushed the door open. Maxwell looked up from his paperwork, surprised at first. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone guarded. Kelvin stood tall, chin lifted. "I heard Vivian and my sons are living in your house. I want to see them." Maxwell leaned back slowly, setting his pen down with deliberate calm. His gaze sharpened. "And you are?" "I'm Kelvin." Their father, A, beat past. Then Maxwell's expression darkened. He gave a dry, humorless smile. "The father?" He stood, walking around his desk until he was standing just a few feet away. His voice dropped, calm but sharp. "You mean the same man who left her out in the cold when she was pregnant? The man who never called, never checked, never once tried to find out if they were alive or dead?" Kelvin's jaw clenched, but Maxwell wasn't done. "You say you're their father. Tell me then. What are their favorite colors? Do you know how they like their eggs? Do you even know they exist beyond the blood they carry?" Kelvin looked away, caught in the silence. Maxwell stepped forward, his voice cold now. "And now, after doing nothing, saying nothing, being nothing, you show up, claiming rights?" He stared him down, not blinking. "You even know they exist, and now you come here, calling yourself their father?" Kelvin's jaw tightened, and in a flash of wounded pride, his fist curled and lifted slightly as though to strike. But Maxwell didn't flinch. He stood still, firm, his gaze like steel. "Don't even think about it," he said coldly, voice steady. Just then, the door swung open sharply. Vivian stepped in, her heels clicking against the floor, her face calm, but her eyes full of fire. She had heard the raised voices from her office down the hall and hurried over. But nothing prepared her for the sight of Kelvin, standing there as if he had any right, any place in the life he so easily abandoned. For a moment, silence blanketed the room. Then her voice sliced through it. "What are you doing here?" Kelvin turned, startled to see her, but quickly tried to regain his composure. "I came to see my sons," he said, as if that single sentence could undo years of silence. Vivian let out a slow, bitter breath. "Your sons?" she repeated. "Do you even know they exist beyond their names? You disappeared, Kelvin. No calls, no messages, no money, nothing." Kelvin stepped forward, attempting to twist the narrative. "I left to find a way, to provide. I needed time to figure things out, and I didn't want you struggling with me." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You left me pregnant, Kelvin, alone. You didn't just go to figure things out. You vanished. You let me suffer. You watched from a distance if you watched at all. And now that they're finally happy, you show up?" His expression hardened, his words coming sharp and cruel. "So what? You just moved on? Opened your legs to another man? Let him play daddy?" Vivian stood still for a moment, as though processing the weight of his words. Then she took a step closer, her voice low, every syllable laced with restraint and fire. "Don't you dare reduce my survival to something vulgar. Maxwell stepped in when you stepped out. He didn't ask for anything in return. He gave us dignity, food, safety, and you did nothing." Kelvin's confidence faltered. "You call me names, but you're the one who vanished," she continued. "You're the one who abandoned 2 innocent children. You're the one who forgot us." Maxwell moved to stand beside Vivian, silently offering his presence as a wall between her and the man who had once left her to face the storm alone. Vivian stared at Kelvin, her voice unwavering. "You don't get to come here, swing your fists, and pretend to be a father. That title? It's earned, and you lost it a long time ago. What would you do if the man who abandoned you during your darkest moment suddenly returned, demanding to be part of your life again? Would you forgive him or shut the door for good? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story to support our growth and help us bring you more powerful content like this.